sold to the rival pack by her brothers, not knowing the Alpha King had dreamt of her. Lyria ran through the underbrush, her heart pounding as though it wanted to escape her chest. Her brother's words had echoed in her mind all day, a cruel chant she could not silence. "You are to be given to the Shadowfang pack. They are our allies now. Your fate is sealed." She stumbled over a root and fell onto the damp earth, her palms scratching against the cold, rough bark. She pressed her face into the moss, trying to still the storm of fear inside her. How could they? How could her own family sell her like a piece of property, trading her away for politics, alliances, and promises that smelled of ash? The betrayal stung, but worse than her brother's decision was the uncertainty of what awaited her in the lands of the Shadowfang. Stories of their cruelty had reached her even in the remote village where she had grown up, tales of warriors who bent the forests to their will and a king whose eyes could freeze a soul. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a faint curiosity stirred. Something in her dreams had prepared her for this, though she did not yet understand it. Her journey was silent but filled with tension. A rider from the Shadowfang pack had arrived at dawn, his black cloak blending with the shadows, his face hidden beneath a hood. He had offered no words, only a cold, firm hand to lead her from her village. Lyria had wanted to resist, to scream, to run, but her brothers had barred her way with sharp eyes and tighter grips. Now she was alone, the familiar lands of her home vanishing behind her with each step. Every rustle in the trees made her flinch. Every distant howl of wolves made her heart quicken. She was entering the world of her nightmares, and yet she could not deny that the stories she had heard of the Shadowfang Alpha stirred something else within her, something like destiny. As the sun began to rise, the mist thickened, wrapping the forest in a soft gray blanket. Lyria saw the silhouette of the Shadowfang stronghold far ahead, rising like a black cliff from the forest floor. Its walls were carved from dark stone, tall and jagged, crowned with spires that seemed to pierce the clouds themselves. The air felt different here, heavier, more alive. Lyria sensed a presence watching her, a force beyond any ordinary human understanding. She shivered but pressed on. When she reached the gates, they opened silently, revealing soldiers who eyed her with suspicion. Their armor gleamed dully under the weak sunlight, and the sharp glint of their weapons made her stomach twist. One of the soldiers, older than the rest and with scars that told stories of battles Lyria could not imagine, stepped forward. "You are the girl," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "The Alpha is expecting you." Lyria nodded, swallowing her fear. "I am Lyria," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. The soldier led her through narrow corridors carved into stone, each step echoing like a drumbeat in her chest. She could feel eyes on her from the shadows, a silent assessment of her every movement, her every expression. She had heard tales of the Alpha's dreams, of a figure who had haunted him since childhood, a figure he sought without knowing why. She did not yet know that she was that figure. Finally, they reached a large hall, its ceilings high and its walls covered with ancient carvings. Moonlight streamed through narrow windows, illuminating the space with a silver glow. And there, standing at the far end, was him, the Alpha King, Kale. He was taller than she had imagined, his presence commanding even without movement. His dark hair fell over his shoulders like a shadow, and his eyes were the color of the stormy sky, deep and unreadable. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he studied her as if trying to recall a memory long buried. Lyria felt the weight of his gaze press upon her, a strange mixture of curiosity and recognition. "You are," he began, his voice smooth but edged with a power that made her knees feel weak. He stopped, as though the words themselves could not capture what he felt. "I have seen you before." Lyria blinked, startled. "I don't understand." Kale's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, but there was no warmth in it. "In dreams," he said. "You have been with me long before this moment. I have sought you, though I did not know why. And now you are here." Her pulse quickened. Dreams, visions. Was he speaking of the same strange images that had haunted her nights? The figure of a wolf, powerful and silent, always watching, always calling. She began, but the words caught in her throat. She wanted to ask him why, how, what it all meant, but fear and awe tied her tongue. Cale stepped closer, and the air seemed to hum with tension. "Fear is natural," he said, as though reading her mind. "Do not let it consume you. You are here because fate, or perhaps something older, has brought you to me." Lyria's mind raced. Fate. Destiny. The words sounded like a story whispered in forgotten languages, yet the feeling in her chest was real. Something deep inside stirred, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and an inexplicable longing. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, voice trembling. Cale's gaze softened briefly, though the intensity did not fade. "I know more than you realize. But knowing is not the same as understanding. You will learn soon enough." A tension hung between them, fragile as the mist that still lingered in the hall. Lyria felt herself pulled toward him, though she could not explain why. Every instinct screamed caution, yet every fiber of her being demanded she step closer. Before she could respond, the hall doors opened again, and another figure entered. A young warrior from Cale's pack, eyes narrowed, lips tight with jealousy. Lyria sensed hostility in the air, the subtle, dangerous currents that flowed through the stronghold. She realized then that this was not just about her. It was about power, politics, and the fragile balance of control. Cale noticed the tension immediately. "Leave us," he commanded. The young warrior's eyes flashed, but he obeyed, retreating into the shadows. Once the door closed, Cale turned back to her. "The world you knew is gone," he said softly. "And the world you will face here is not gentle, but neither is it without hope. You must decide if you will be a pawn or a player." Lyria swallowed, feeling the weight of his words. She had been sold into this life, betrayed by the very people who should have protected her. And yet, for the first time, she glimpsed a possibility, a chance to define her own path within these dark, dangerous walls. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the hall. Cale stepped back, giving her space, yet the unspoken tension between them remained, like a thread stretched too tight, ready to snap or bind them together forever. As night fell, Lyria was shown to her quarters, a small room with stone walls and a single window that opened to the moonlit forests beyond. She sank onto the edge of the bed, hands trembling, mind racing. The words of the Alpha King echoed in her head. "I have seen you before. You have been with me long before this moment." Sleep came slowly, filled with dreams that were more vivid than reality. She saw the figure again, the wolf-shaped shadow with stormy eyes. It moved closer, always just beyond reach, calling to her. And in that dream, for the first time, she understood. Her arrival in the Shadowfang lands was no accident. Her fate, tangled with this Alpha King, had been written long before her brother's betrayal. And when the morning light broke across the mountains, Lyria knew that nothing would ever be the same. The stronghold that had seemed so cold and unyielding now felt alive with possibility and danger. She did not yet know what awaited her within the walls or the storms that would come. But she knew one thing with perfect clarity. She was no longer just a girl sold to a rival pack. She was a piece of something greater, something ancient, and the Alpha King who had dreamed of her was waiting, watching, judging, and perhaps longing. And somewhere deep inside, Lyria felt the faintest spark of courage. A spark that would either ignite a fire or burn her alive. The morning air was crisp as Lyria stepped out of her small room, the chill making her shiver despite the warmth of the sun. The Shadowfang stronghold was already alive with movement. Warriors in dark leather and steel moved through the courtyards with silent precision, their eyes sharp, calculating. The castle walls, jagged and towering, cast long shadows over the stone pathways, and the forest beyond whispered secrets to those who would listen. Lyria walked slowly, feeling the weight of every gaze. Her heart still raced from the night before, from the words Cale had spoken, and the strange pull she felt toward him. She had not yet spoken to him properly, not asked the questions that burned in her mind. Who was he really? Why did he claim to have dreamed of her? And why did she feel deep inside that she had known him long before today? A figure appeared at the edge of the courtyard, tall and commanding, with dark hair falling over broad shoulders. Lyria froze. Cale. He moved toward her silently, each step deliberate, as though the ground itself acknowledged his power. When he stopped before her, the sun caught the edge of his eyes, stormy gray, making her feel small, fragile, and strangely seen all at once. "You are awake," Cale said, voice calm but carrying a force that made the air shift. "Good. You must see everything if you are to understand your place here." I am trying," Lyria admitted softly. "But everything is so different. I do not understand it all." Cale's gaze softened, though it did not lose its intensity. Few do, at first. The Shadowfang pack has its rules, its strengths, and its dangers. You must learn to see beyond fear if you are to survive, and perhaps thrive. He motioned for her to follow, and together they walked through the winding corridors of the castle. Lyria's eyes scanned every detail: the carved stone walls, the torches burning with strange, greenish flames, the banners of the pack fluttering in the morning wind. Everything seemed alive, watching, waiting. "Why me?" she asked suddenly, unable to hold the question any longer. "Why have you dreamed of me? Why do you look at me as though I belong somewhere I do not?" Cale paused at the top of a stairway overlooking the great hall. Dreams are not always gentle. Sometimes they are warnings, sometimes they are guidance. I do not know yet which you are to me, but I know this: you have been part of my life long before you arrived in these walls. Lyria's stomach twisted. Part of her wanted to run, to escape the weight of his gaze, the intensity of his presence. And yet another part, a deep, hidden part, yearned to understand, to follow, to belong. She had never felt such conflict before. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of another figure, a young warrior named Riven, who had been watching her since the gates opened. His eyes narrowed at Cale, then at Lyria, his posture stiff with unspoken resentment. "Alpha," Riven said, his voice careful but edged with tension. "She is new. Should I show her the grounds?" Cale's expression remained unreadable, though a flicker of warning passed in his eyes. "No," he said simply. "She will learn with me." Riven hesitated, then bowed slightly before retreating. Lyria noticed his eyes linger on her, the tension in his jaw betraying jealousy, suspicion, and perhaps fear. Cale turned to her once more. "The pack is wary of outsiders, especially those brought here by others. You must prove yourself, not to me but to them and to yourself." "What if I fail?" Lyria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cale's eyes softened, just enough for her to catch a hint of something human beneath the command. "Then you will learn to rise anyway. Strength is not in perfection. Strength is in surviving, in understanding, and in choosing. You have that choice now." As they walked through the castle, Cale showed her the training grounds, the armory, and the library. A vast hall of ancient books, scrolls, and tomes that spoke of the pack's history, its battles, and the legends of the lands beyond. Lyria's eyes widened at the knowledge contained within these walls. Every corner seemed alive with stories, whispers of magic, and power that she could almost feel brushing against her skin. "You will study here," Cale said, guiding her to a section filled with records of prophecies and visions. "Much of what has happened before will shape what is to come. Knowledge is as important as strength. The pack respects those who understand, not just those who fight." Lyria ran her fingers along the spines of the ancient books. Some hummed faintly, as if alive. Her heart pounded. The feeling she had sensed in her dreams, the sense of destiny, of being watched, seemed stronger here. Stronger because she was no longer alone in it. Cale's presence was constant, a quiet shadow by her side, guiding, observing, testing. As the day passed, Lyria realized how complex the pack's hierarchy was. Warriors competed for honor and respect, and every gesture, every word carried meaning. Some looked at her with curiosity, others with suspicion, and a few with outright hostility. She sensed that Riven was more dangerous than the others, subtle in his manipulation, eager to turn any mistake into a weapon against her. Despite it all, Kale remained her anchor. Though his demeanor was stern and controlled, there were moments, fleeting, almost imperceptible, when his gaze lingered on her in ways that stirred something deep inside. It was not the admiration of a ruler for a subject, nor the desire of a man for a woman. It was something older, something primal, yet tethered by restraint, respect, and unspoken rules. By evening, Kale led Lyria to the outer walls of the castle, where the forest stretched endlessly beyond. The air was thick with mist, and the distant howls of wolves echoed like whispers of forgotten secrets. "Look," Kale said, pointing to the horizon where the sun dipped behind the mountains. "The lands beyond are not safe. The forests are home to creatures, forces, and rival clans who would see us destroyed if they could. You must learn to see, to hear, and to feel what others do not. Only then will you understand your role here." Lyria nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. She had been sold to this pack, yes, but the thought that she might play a part in shaping the fate of the Shadowfangs, and perhaps beyond, made her pulse quicken with both fear and excitement. Kale's voice broke through her thoughts, low and deliberate. "Your dreams will guide you, but dreams can also deceive. You must learn to trust yourself and to test what you feel against reality." That night, Lyria could not sleep. She dreamt again of the shadowy figure that had haunted her for years, but this time the figure spoke, though not in words. Emotions, memories, and images swirled together, a torrent of sensations she barely understood. She saw herself standing in the middle of the forest, surrounded by warriors she did not recognize. She saw Kale, reaching out to her, storm in his eyes, yet a storm tempered by longing. And then a shadow loomed over him, a threat she could not name, a darkness that threatened to consume them both. She awoke with a start, breathless, heart-pounding. The dream had felt real, more real than anything in her life before. She realized with a chill that the danger was not only outside these walls, it was coming from forces she could not yet see. The next morning, Kale summoned her again. He led her to the training grounds where the warriors were sparring. "Observe," he instructed. "Not just their movements, but their intentions. A true leader sees the currents beneath the surface, not just the waves above." Lyria watched as warriors clashed, each strike precise, each defense calculated. She noted the subtle shifts in stance, the slight hesitation before a move, the unspoken signals exchanged. Riven's presence was constant, a silent challenge, his eyes narrowing whenever she looked at him. "You will spar soon," Kale said. "Not to fight them, but to understand yourself, to see what you can and cannot control." Lyria swallowed, fear coiling in her stomach. But when Kale's gaze met hers, there was something there, a quiet trust, a challenge, and a promise. She felt a surge of determination. She would not be a pawn. She would learn. She would survive. She would become someone worthy of the eyes that had sought her for so long. As she prepared for her first sparring lesson, she felt a presence behind her. Turning slightly, she glimpsed Kale watching, silent, unreadable. The tension between them was palpable. It was not hostility, nor was it simple curiosity. It was something more, older, and deeper. Something that neither of them could yet name, but both felt. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the training grounds in golden fire, a sense of foreboding settled over her. The Shadowfang pack was more than a home. It was a test, a challenge, and perhaps a prison. But one thing was certain. She had awakened something in the Alpha King, something that had slumbered in his dreams for years, and the consequences of that awakening had only just begun. The forest beyond the Shadowfang stronghold was quiet, too quiet. Mist clung to the trees, curling like silent serpents around the trunks. Lyria walked carefully along the narrow path, her boots pressing softly into the damp earth. Kale followed a few steps behind, his presence commanding even without words. The Alpha King's stormy eyes scanned the shadows, every muscle poised, alert to unseen threats. Lyria could feel the tension in the air, the hum of magic that ran through the land. It had begun that morning, when Kale had taken her to the ancient ruins hidden deep in the forest. These ruins were older than the strongest warriors, older than the oldest trees, and whispered of secrets older than the clans themselves. "You must understand," Kale said quietly, breaking the silence, "this place is dangerous. Not just in the way a rival pack can be dangerous, but in ways that touch the spirit and the mind. There is a curse here, one that has lingered for centuries, and you are part of it." Lyria's heart skipped a beat. "A curse, me?" Her voice trembled. "I don't understand." Kale stopped, turning to face her. The wind rustled his dark hair, and his gaze was heavy with both warning and something she could not yet name. "Long before you were born, this land was touched by forces older than anyone alive today. The curse was meant to bind, to punish, to control, but it also waits. It waits for someone who can either break it or succumb to it. That someone is you." Lyria stumbled backward, catching herself on a gnarled tree trunk. "Me? Why me?" I don't know anything about curses or powers." Kale's voice softened, though his intensity never wavered. "Perhaps that is why it chose you. Curses are clever. They seek those who are unaware of their own strength, those who can be tempted or transformed. You have a choice, Lyria. To ignore it is to risk destruction. To embrace it is to risk everything." Her mind raced, and a wave of fear threatened to pull her under. She wanted to run, to escape into the safe, predictable world she had known. But there was no escape now. Not from the stronghold, not from Kale, not from the feeling deep in her chest that she had been brought here for a reason beyond understanding. They reached the ruins, stones carved with runes older than memory. Moss and vines wrapped around the pillars like a protective shroud, and the air was thick with the scent of earth and magic. Lyria shivered, both from the cold and from the strange pull that made her feel seen. "Step carefully," Kale warned. "The magic here responds to thought, to feeling. The curse is old and it is patient. It will not be broken by fear or hesitation." Lyria took a deep breath, forcing herself to move forward. The stones beneath her feet hummed faintly, and she felt a shiver of recognition, as if some part of her soul had been here before. She looked up at Kale, who studied her silently, his stormy eyes unreadable yet full of something. Longing, concern, desire restrained by duty. She could not tell, but the pull between them was undeniable, a thread connecting their hearts in ways neither could yet understand. At the center of the ruins, a pedestal stood, carved from a single slab of black stone. On it lay a small crystal, faintly glowing with a soft, silver light. Kale approached it first, his hand hovering above it, and the air seemed to crackle. "This crystal contains the memory of the curse," Kale said. "It will show you the path you must take, but it will also show you the danger. Only one with courage and clarity can face it and survive." Lyria stepped closer, her heart hammering. She felt the pull of the crystal, as if it called her name, beckoning her to understand what she had been brought here to do. Kale's presence behind her was steady, solid, yet not overpowering. She could feel his energy, his power, and something more, a silent trust that made her feel braver than she had ever felt before. She reached out, fingers trembling, and touched the crystal. Instantly, her vision blurred, and she was no longer in the ruins. The world around her twisted into a dreamlike landscape, forests of silver trees under a violet sky, rivers of light that flowed like liquid glass. In the distance, she saw Kale, standing as though waiting for her, yet something in his form shifted, darkened. "You must see it," a voice whispered, though not from Kale. The words came from everywhere, echoing inside her mind. "The curse seeks to claim him, to twist the Alpha's heart and mind. Only your choice can save him or destroy both of you. Fear gripped Lyria, yet beneath it stirred determination. She had been brought here not as a victim, but as a part of something greater. The dreams, Kale's words, the pull she felt, it all led to this. She had to try, even if the cost was unimaginable. Kale stepped forward in the vision, storm in his eyes, yet there was a flicker of vulnerability she had never seen before. "Lyria," he called, voice carrying over the dream realm winds. "Do you understand? The choice is yours. You must decide if you will trust yourself and trust me." She began, her voice trembling but firm, "I trust you, and I trust myself. I will not let this curse win." The crystal pulsed with light, the ruins around her shimmering as if responding to her resolve. Shadows swirled, forming shapes of creatures she could not name, figures that hissed and coiled, testing her will. Yet with each step forward, guided by Kale's silent presence, Lyria felt her courage grow. She faced her fears, naming them in her mind, claiming them, refusing to be bound by them. Hours, or perhaps moments, time twisted in the dream realm passed. The shadows surged, testing her at every turn. Kale moved beside her, always just out of reach, a silent anchor. Lyria realized that the true test was not of magic alone, but of trust, understanding, and the willingness to act despite fear. Finally, she reached the center of the vision, where Kale stood surrounded by shadows that threatened to consume him. The darkness lunged at her first, testing her, trying to turn her back. But she did not falter. Drawing on everything she had learned, everything she felt, she reached for him. The moment their hands touched, a surge of energy shot through her, and the shadows recoiled, howling as they dissolved into nothingness. Kale looked at her, storm and awe mixing in his eyes, and for the first time, Lyria saw the man behind the Alpha, the man who had dreamed of her, feared for her, and longed for her without understanding why. The vision faded and Lyria found herself back in the ruins, the crystal now dark and still. Kale stood before her, silent, observing her with an intensity that made her heart ache. "You did it," he said finally, his voice low, almost reverent. "You faced what most would flee. And you have shown me that trust, courage, and love are stronger than fear and fate." Lyria's chest heaved. I was scared," she admitted. "I didn't know if I could do it." Kale stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "Fear is natural. What matters is what you do with it. You have chosen well." The bond between them had shifted, deepened in ways neither could fully name. The Alpha's authority remained, but now it was tempered by a connection that was mutual, fragile, and infinitely precious. Lyria realized that she had not just survived the curse, she had begun to change the course of it, perhaps even rewrite the future. But even as relief washed over her, a shiver of warning ran down her spine. The curse was broken in part, yes, but not entirely. Something still lingered, unseen, patient, and watching. Lyria knew that the world beyond the ruins was still dangerous, that the Shadowfang pack had rivals, enemies, and secrets she could not yet understand. And most importantly, she knew that her bond with Kale, now stronger than ever, would be tested in ways she could not yet imagine. As they left the ruins, the forest seemed quieter, almost respectful of what had occurred. Kale walked beside her, not ahead, not behind, but equal, their steps in rhythm. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it spoke of the shift between them. She was no longer merely the girl sold to the rival pack. She was a partner, a force in her own right, and a key to the Alpha's destiny. That night back in her chambers, Lyria could not sleep. She stared at the moonlit forest through her window, thinking of the shadows, the crystal, and the dream realm she had faced. Kale's words echoed in her mind, "Trust yourself, trust me." And she knew, deep inside, that the choices she made now would shape not only her fate, but the fate of the Shadowfang pack, and perhaps even the lands beyond. The wind carried a chill as Lyria stood at the edge of the forest, the first light of dawn casting silver across the treetops. She could hear the distant howl again, the echo of a presence older and more powerful than any creature she had encountered. The Shadowfang lands were stirring. Something had awakened in the forest, something that would test every lesson she had learned, every bond she had forged, and every ounce of courage within her. Kale appeared at her side, silent as a shadow, yet his presence felt like a shield. His stormy eyes scanned the horizon, sharp and alert, yet softened as they landed on her. "It has begun," he said simply. "The curse is not fully broken. What we faced in the ruins was only the first trial. Now we face the force behind it." Lyria swallowed hard, the memory of the dream realm, the crystal, and the shadows swirling around Kale still fresh in her mind. I am ready," she said, though a tremor betrayed her fear. She had faced her deepest anxieties before, but this was different. This was real. This was outside the protection of ruins or visions. Kale placed a hand gently on her shoulder, grounding her. "Courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means moving forward despite it. Together, we will face it." They moved through the forest, silent except for the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. The mist swirled thickly now, obscuring vision, and the distant howl grew louder, closer, and more urgent. Lyria felt the pull in her chest again, the same feeling she had had when first arriving at the stronghold. The sense that she had been called here for a purpose she was only beginning to understand. As they reached a clearing, the forest opened into a circle of ancient stones, taller and darker than the ruins she had faced before. The air shimmered with unseen power. At the center, a figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in dark energy that seemed to warp the very air around it. Lyria's heart skipped. The force before her was alive, breathing with malevolent intent, yet it was not a simple enemy. It felt intelligent, patient, and ancient. Kale stepped forward, his presence radiating authority and power. "You will not harm her," he said, voice firm, commanding, yet calm. "This ends now." The figure paused, tilting its head as if studying them. Then in a sudden motion, the darkness surged forward, coiling like a living storm. Lyria felt the pull in her soul, the tug of the curse seeking to bind her, to twist her resolve. She stumbled, but Kale caught her hand, anchoring her. "Focus on what you know," he said. "Focus on trust and on your strength." Lyria drew in a deep breath, feeling the energy of the forest, the stones, and Kale's presence all flow into her. She remembered the lessons of the ruins, the test of courage, the need to face fear, the bond that had been forged through shared trials. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, the fear had not vanished, but it had been transformed into determination. The dark force lunged again, and this time Lyria met it head-on. She extended her hands, feeling the magic of the land respond to her will. Light and shadow clashed, swirling around her, crackling through the mist. Kale moved beside her, silent and steadfast, guiding her without words, lending his strength without overpowering her own. The battle was not of fists or swords, but of spirit and will. The curse tested them, seeking to exploit doubt, fear, and mistrust. But Lyria's heart was steady. She trusted Kale. She trusted herself. With every heartbeat, every breath, she pushed the darkness back, breaking its hold on the forest, on the land, and on the Alpha. And then at the climax, the shadow shrieked and recoiled, dissipating into nothingness. The air stilled, the mist cleared, and the forest seemed to exhale, releasing centuries of tension. Lyria stood at the center, trembling, sweat on her brow, yet filled with a profound sense of triumph. Kale reached for her hand, his eyes softening, storm and warmth mingling. "You did it," he whispered, voice low, reverent. "You faced the darkness, and you did not falter." Lyria looked up at him, awe and relief mingling in her expression. "We did it," she corrected, her voice stronger than she had expected. "Together." Kale's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, almost a whisper of a human moment amidst the Alpha's power. "Together," he echoed, and the word carried a weight of promise, trust, and unspoken understanding. The clearing was silent now, but the bond between them had shifted irrevocably. Lyria realized that she had not only survived the curse but transformed it, reshaping the path of destiny for both herself and Kale. She was no longer the girl sold to a rival pack. She was a force, a partner, a presence that could influence fate itself. As they returned to the stronghold, the pack members who had once been wary now regarded her with a mixture of awe and respect. Even Riven, who had been subtle in his hostility, lowered his gaze, understanding that Lyria was no ordinary girl. She had proven herself, not through titles or blood but through courage, wisdom, and heart. Back within the walls of the castle, Kale led Lyria to a balcony overlooking the forest. The sun had risen higher now, casting golden light over the trees, illuminating the world in warmth and clarity. Lyria leaned on the railing, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of everything they had faced and the hope of what was yet to come. "You have changed everything," Kale said softly, standing beside her. "The curse, the forest, the pack, even me. You have given me something I did not know I could have: choice, trust, and hope." Lyria turned to him, feeling the depth of his words, the intensity of the moment. "And you have given me something I could never have imagined: strength, guidance, and belief. You trusted me when I did not even trust myself." Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them, more powerful than any words. They had faced darkness, fear, and uncertainty, and emerged stronger, bound not by destiny alone, but by choice and mutual respect. For a long moment they simply stood together, watching the forest below, listening to the soft rustle of leaves, and feeling the connection that had grown between them, delicate, yet unbreakable. And then a soft breeze carried a new sound, faint yet distinct, the echo of a howl that was not one of danger, but of recognition. The forest itself seemed to acknowledge their victory, the harmony of bond and courage, the balance restored yet ever fragile. Kale turned to her, hand brushing hers gently. "This is not the end," he said. "The world beyond these walls will always hold challenges, but together we will face them, and I will not let you walk this path alone." Lyria's chest tightened, a mixture of emotion that brought tears to her eyes. "I will not walk alone," she said, her voice steady, her heart full. "And I will not let you walk alone either." In that moment, the Alpha King and the girl who had been sold to the rival pack stood side by side, not as master and subject, not as pawn and player, but as equals, partners, and allies. The bond forged through trials, courage, and trust had reshaped their destinies, and the Shadowfang land seemed to breathe easier for it. Days passed, and the pack settled into a new rhythm. Lyria trained alongside the warriors, studied the ancient texts, and walked beside Kale, learning not only the ways of the Alpha but the deeper responsibilities of leadership, compassion, and vision. The bond between them deepened, subtle gestures of trust and understanding passing in silence, in shared glances, in moments where words were not needed. And yet, Lyria knew the world beyond the forest still held uncertainties. Rivals, ancient forces, and unknown dangers waited, patient and watchful, but she no longer felt fear as she once had. She had faced darkness and found strength. She had faced destiny and found choice. She had faced the Alpha King and found connection, trust, and the beginnings of love, not the kind born of fate alone, but of courage, understanding, and shared struggle. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold, Kale led Lyria to the peak of the Shadowfang Mountains. Below them, the forest stretched endlessly, bathed in twilight. "This," Kale said softly, hand brushing hers, "is ours to protect, not through fear, not through dominance, but through understanding, courage, and choice." Lyria nodded, her heart swelling. "And we will protect it, together." They stood in silence, hands intertwined, eyes on the horizon, feeling the strength of what they had built: trust, courage, and a bond that could face the shadows of the world. Somewhere in the distance, the forest whispered, the mountains sighed, and the first stars appeared. witnesses to a new chapter in the story of the Shadowfang lands, Kale and the girl who had once been sold, but was now reborn. The howl of a wolf echoed in the distance, not a warning, but a song of recognition, of triumph, of beginnings yet to come. Lyria smiled faintly. She knew the path ahead would not be easy, but for the first time she did not feel fear. She felt power, purpose, and the quiet, unshakable certainty that together, she and Kale could face anything. And as the night settled over the mountains, the Shadowfang pack stood united, the curse broken, and the bond between Alpha and Girl stronger than any darkness that dared to rise. Theirs was a story of redemption, courage, and the quiet, enduring strength of trust, and it had only just begun.